Hey, John Gilroy here. According to the Federal CDO Council, data is life and the foundation of every function of government. Today, a focus on data storage. Hit the music, Manny. Welcome to the Federal Tech Podcast, the podcast that connects you to federal technology leaders. My name is John Gilroy, and I will be your moderator. Our guest today is Greg Carl. He's a principal technologist for a company called Pure Storage, and I would be remiss if I didn't tell the audience we are recording this in lovely downtown Washington, D.C. at Hamilton Live. Pretty nice place, isn't it?
It's fantastic, man, and thank you for coming out. It's just been a great chance, the opportunity to talk about what we're doing in the data space, and I love this venue. It's fantastic.
We're right in the heart of it. We're in the heart of Washington, D.C. We could get on the roof here and look around and see all kinds of federal agencies, and that's why I opened up with the Federal CDO Council quote, data is life. Maybe that's a T-shirt for Pure Storage. What do you think?
It's funny. I say it to customers all the time, and I said it again today. Like, data is now the hardest currency on the planet, right? It is 100% the true value that any organization can grow out of. And it hasn't always should be king. And that's a lot of things I talk about with federal leaders about how we're maximizing and leveraging our data to its ultimate degree. And at the end of the day, what it comes down to is sometimes I got to take a step back to go take a step forward. I kind of love what we're talking about here today.
I love quotes, and I do pull quotes all the time. We are at an event, by the way. Pure Storage is sponsoring this event. Lots of govies, a lot of people down here talking about AI and data storage. And you have a speaker in there who is a card-carrying brainiac. He has more degrees than I can name, and his name is Dr. Richard Galvez. And I love quoting smart people. And he said that it has to be in a formula. Like, smart guys have to talk in formulas. He says AI equals data plus compute plus algorithms. So, data part today, huh?
It's fantastic, right? Richard is phenomenal in taking very complex scenarios and processes and breaking it down really to what it means. And that's kind of what we try and do with everything here at Pure. But Richard is kind of the glue that holds everything together here when bridging the gap between customer data and actually making it actionable.
Yeah.
Right? Instead of just having an initiative or a go-to or a thing to buy, we're now driving towards an outcome. And having folks like Richard Galvez, like William Sorgan Fry are just fantastic in helping our customers get there.
I was having breakfast with some people right here at the event. I was talking to a woman from the GAO, and she didn't want to talk about FlashBait. She didn't want to talk about Worm. She didn't want to talk about RAG. She wanted to say, well, what's in it for me? Yeah. What can Big Greg over here do for me? Can it make my life easier, or how can it impact the people at the GAO? And I think that's what the whole object is here today. You get a brainiac like Richard in there, and he can explain a lot of the nuts and bolts. And let's just unpack this one tiny part of it. And, sure. And Richard looked down on me for not being very smart, the data part of it. So if you're going to use artificial intelligence, generally speaking, you have to have some kind of training model, training data. And this is the first step, but this is the key step, isn't it? 100%.
The data sanitation and really understanding what data you have, that's how you get to that next level. We're finding with a lot of federal customers that, they know they have a lot of data. They just don't know how to unlock that data. And what we've actually found, and especially as AI has kind of blown up and, on the borderline saying whitewashing of AI, is that AI is actually not a technology initiative. It's actually more of a human initiative. It's giving our customers and really our federal agencies the opportunity to, interact with their data in a way they haven't before, with their constituencies, for other agencies, for more efficient, operations. Kind of the sky's the limit, and helping them get to that first step of understanding what you have, and then we can get to why and how you're going to get there for what your outcome might be for AI.
So, Greg, if you look at general look at data writ large. It's not all structured. It's not in little Excel spreadsheets. A lot of it's unstructured. It comes from images, text, video, sensors, satellites, railroad sensors, everything all over the world. And the objective, and this is what I explained to the woman from GAO, the objective is, hey, so what? You have to derive value from all these sensors and putting it all together. And I think that's where Pure Storage sits in. It says, yes, we can help you derive value from all kinds of different sources.
Yeah, we can, I got a general term I use, is we can help people get out of the data hoarding business and get into the data execution, data analysis, and really driving to those deeper outcomes. Because I'll tell you, ever since the data explosion of the last 15, 20 years, and I think the stat that I've used quite often is 90% of the world's data was generated in the last 2 years, and it's only going to get more and more exponential over time. cool, but what are we going to do with it? What can we do with it? And this is that pivotal moment where agencies, organizations, enterprises are saying, okay, how do I maximize on this? How to become more efficient? How can I offer more services back to my constituents? How can I be, a better, steward to my customers, if you will?
So I always tell my students that in order to be terrific, you got to be specific. So I'm going to be specific here. Let's have a use case, okay? The consultants at Deloitte call them use cases, so call it a use case. In many environments, when a transition is made to the cloud, people do this fancy term called lift and shift and just pick it up and move it to the cloud, and everything's fine and dandy. And one aspect of lift and shift is lifting and shifting data. And in the presentation this morning, I think perhaps a gentleman named William or maybe you were explaining this whole called problem and data tiering. And just something as simple as moving massive amounts of data from point A to point B. You could have 10 PhDs like Richard sitting around twiddling their thumbs. Wait a minute, I'm paying that guy big bucks. I don't want him sitting around looking out the window. Yeah. And so let's define this problem of data tiering and how Pure Storage can help.
Yeah. So we look at it from a couple of different lenses. First and foremost is this goes back to the whole adage of treat your data as a first-class citizen. Treat your data with the importance it deserves, because a time will come when if you treat it like something that's tiered off to an archive layer or sent off-site or sent to a separate technology platform, you've not just created a silo. You've created, a more restrictive layer to what you could possibly do with that data. So when we talk to our customers about consolidation, about, making performance an afterthought by consolidating on the platform, but most importantly, taking a holistic approach. So if we have something like our zero move tiering initiative on the FlashBlade platform, it becomes kind of the rethinking of a legacy concept, tiering, right? Every IT shop in the world, in one way, shape, or form, is using tiering. What if we did it the right way? Right? What if instead of moving the actual data, we just said, you know what? Let's prioritize this piece of data versus this piece of data. This is what's important to the business today. This might be important tomorrow, but I can't get rid of it. Everyone has data they can't get rid of. So when we look at it from that lens, now we have initiative. Now we have purpose. And now we have something that's dynamic that allows us to iterate processes faster and faster. That's what our customers are looking for.
And I think artificial intelligence is iterating processes. Because what happens is data has to be trained, there's different models, it goes through all kinds of many different revisions and changes, and we're not talking about, a sound file. We're talking about petabytes of information that has to be transferred efficiently. And oh, by the way, because this is a federal government, has to be encrypted along the way, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And that's why in part of our data service management platform, security is not an afterthought. It's a forethought. Because we designed this from the ground up to be secure. So when you talk about things like FIPS 140-2/3, we're validated, USGV6 validation, we're there. NIAP validation when it comes to common criteria. We're staying ahead of the curve because we know our customers don't want to be held up with red tape. They want to say, hey, if this has been secure as a forethought, I don't have to play the compliance game. I can now be once again looking forward and doing what is more impactful instead of keeping the lights on, right? That's what we're trying to get our customers out of that mindset, and something like our data service and management platform can do just that for them.
I'm very, very sophisticated. I got up early this morning and I went to Google. I typed in Gartner Pure Storage just to see where you come up, Well, maybe I stumbled on something, but upper right. Well, I did 4 or 5 years in a row or something. Upright count. Put your feet up and smoke a cigar. I mean, that's where you guys are. I mean, it's not. Yeah. I don't think there's. Well, not much competition out there, is there? I mean, you're the ones.
It's flattering, right? Because I come from other. I haven't always been up here my whole career. But what's interesting about that, if you look at, for instance, block storage, right? We've been furthest right, furthest north, and been on that platform for 10 years. The company's only existed for 15. So that's mean 5 years into the game, we were in, furthest right, furthest north. What does that mean? It means our vision and where we're going is differentiating what our customers are telling they need as a differentiator. And what I mean by that is they need simplicity, they need security, they need scalability, and they don't need to play the infrastructure for the sake of infrastructure game. Everything we do is customer-focused and purpose-driven, and our customers appreciate that at the end of the day.
Okay, we're going to play Stump the Chump. There was another speaker this morning. His first name is William. I forget what was his last name?
Sorgenfrei.
Sorgenfrei. Hard for me to spell that and remember that. Taking notes. And he had a great quote. This is another T-shirt. He said, data is gold. We have to unlock the data that you have. Yeah. So let's apply that to any agency within, shouting distance of this building. they have a lot of data that is stored that they can derive information from. And how can they unlock that? It's sitting in a server somewhere, and maybe they couldn't access it before because of constraints, but Pure Storage has ways to unlock that data.
Yeah. And really what that is about is, number one, consolidating, right? Getting rid of those silos so they can actually iterate and introduce those new processes without reinventing the wheel, without creating new projects, without creating something that would really take a completely separate lift and shift initiative that we couldn't align to a specific outcome. So what I mean by that is, okay, if I have a lot of files, if I have a lot of objects, could be backup, doesn't matter what it is. If I look at it through the lens of its importance, right? Some folks will just say, well, it's old data, it's backup, we'll put it down there and just hope no emergency happens, right? In case of emergency, break glass. What happens when that does happen, right? If we can be more proactive in how we approach and think things, this is where the focus on data versus storage is so key. Nobody cares about storage. I hate to say this. It's in our company's name, and I'll say this, someone says Pure Storage. People care about data. People care about the outcomes they can get from their data. And how we do that is by getting rid of the white noise, getting rid of the perceived challenges that have been associated with traditional storage management, complexity, silos, very specific skill sets, and saying, you know what, why don't we have it be simple, secure, scalable, and oh, by the way, why don't we give it a consumption model that can make it like a cloud-like experience? I'm talking fully integrated, SaaS offerings with a 6 nines backed SLA. That's differentiated, right? That's a cloud-like experience that our customers can consume on-prem. Like that's a massive, massive change. We've heard the industry, they like cloud. What do they like about cloud? You mentioned lift and shift earlier. I was kind of twitching a little bit. I'm glad we aren't on video. But hearing that over and over again, it's pain. I just hear pain, pain, pain. It's going to come again, right? It's something that I know customers, they didn't go to cloud the right way. If you adapt a cloud operating model and become more data-driven, right? I hate to use that term, it's kind of slap it a lot too, but becoming more data-focused with a cloud operating model, that's how you can pivot on a dime and do whatever it is you find is to be strategic or tactical for your agencies.
So, Greg, I'm going to say 3 words, and I'm going to make it cringe, okay? You ready?
Hit me.
Autonomous AI contributions.
Oh, boy.
You're not hearing screaming. I mean, the whole idea behind training data is to have valid data that you can make decisions on and train an AI model. But what's happening is the data is creating data. So if the beginning point is invalid or poisoned, you get this multiplied snowball going down the hill where you get autonomous AI making the wrong contributions.
Yeah, it's that concept of garbage in, garbage out, right? The more
danger,
give me more bad, I'll give you exactly what you asked for. It's not the machine's fault. Absolutely. Data classification and tagging and categorization understanding is another part of that. Hey, treat your data as a first-class citizen. Like, do your background, do your homework, making sure that what you want to move forward and the data you do have today is exactly what you want and design it to be. Because otherwise, again, you're poisoning the well, right? You're going to move down a very expensive and sometimes very time-consuming initiative that could hold back business processes, hold back agency iteration. And I got to tell you, in the federal space, every 4 years, things are a little fragile. If you take 2 years on a project and it's just full of spoiled data, guess what? A lot of uncertainty and a lot of risk introduced to, a lot of established agencies.
Well, here we are, Christmas time, when my son was in college. And Christmas, he'd work at UPS, and he would do a lot of moving in and out of trucks and all kinds of heavy lifting. We set this up, aren't we? And he lifted small boxes, little boxes, maybe up to 45 pounds. He did a lot of it. And when you think of lift and shift, you may think of, maybe light boxes. But as William said earlier, he said data has gravity. And so this whole concept of moving from one cloud service provider to another, this isn't just a flip of the switch. This isn't getting a two-wheeler and rolling into the UPS truck. This is a major policy. That's why I have to worry about data. And what about people who are maybe involved in a cloud service provider and perhaps they want to move to a different one? Sure. Then what?
There is no easy button for it, right? We've always heard the term multi-cloud, operational, hybrid cloud models, and I'll tell you, I've worked with a lot of leaders, a lot of executives that I've been very fortunate to work with over the years, and it's not because, hey, we're all in here and we're all in over here, right? Our leaders that are really strategic, they have a purpose for everything they have, right? It's not just a matter of being in the cloud to say, quote unquote, I'm being in the cloud because I read it in CIO magazine in my first class flight on my Delta, right? That's not serving any sort of service to anyone. But what it is about is utilizing and making sure that the experience is consistent across. So when you say something like lift and shift, which is taking a virtual machine or a physical workload, putting it into an environment that was not designed for that at all, not designed to scale that way, not designed to be consumed that way, heck, in some cases, it might not be able to keep up from a data perspective. I worked with a customer a few years ago where they did exactly that. It's like, you know what? We have been told that this cloud provider could take care of us, soup to nuts, no problem. We're going in. Thanks for the memories, Greg. We're going to the cloud.
Yeah.
Like Godspeed, sir. Let me know how it goes. Greg, it cost me 8x of what I thought it was going to cost me. Well, why is that? Well, we didn't take into account storage performance. We had it on-prem, and oh my gosh, you don't have to pay ingress and egress fees going in between. What is this? I used to have 2 sites, and what is happening is, and this is what has sparked a lot of repatriation. It's all learned through pain. The more and closer you can get to that operating model, the destination doesn't matter.
And I don't want to use more words to make you cringe, but there are bandwidth limitations for some organizations.
100%.
Dare I say that?
Yeah, 100%.
And how does that go into the formula? So you and I are sitting at a whiteboard. Okay, we have an agency going to move from CSP 1 to CSP 2, and talk to you in 8 hours after you run out of markers. It's difficult.
Yeah. Yeah, it's nothing easy about it, because what you're basically saying is, I want to take everything that I know and understand and completely accept it as, the status quo, and I'm going to throw all that out the window, and let's dip a toe in and see what happens, right? It's really out of the frying pan into the fire, because while there is some consistency, there's always a gotcha. There's always a asterisk of batteries not included, right? Oh yeah, you could have done that over here, but you did it over here, and oh, by the way, do you know you have to pay to move that data, to get it out of there? Like the phrase I use is kind of like a Hotel California, right? You can get in, but you can't leave very easily. And now we have seen some change in CSPs and alleviating some of that, especially in the federal space and for enterprises want to move their data out. But it's still not an easy button. It never will be. It's not designed to be.
No, it's not at all. I've done a lot of interviews with many different people, and there's usually phrases that maybe some companies have or organizations have that may not translate. Sometimes they do. When Dr. Galvez was speaking this morning, he talked about a validated design. And so this isn't a federal government terminology. It's terminology that Pure Storage uses. So from your perspective, so a validated design is matching the right system to the AI application? What is a validated design?
That's a good question, right? So I've done a lot of work with converged systems, hyper-converged systems, reference architectures, and where validated designs come in is very interesting. So I did a lot back in the day with old V-block systems, like converged infrastructure. Hey, this is exactly what it'll look like, and here's what you'll get from it. It's saying, hey, I want to go order a meal from a restaurant. I know exactly what I'm going to get, and here's the side I got, and voila, here we go. It's exactly what I expected. The validated design is kind of like getting a recipe from your mom, right? The little postcard that has use 1 cup of this,
cooking like for this. At Thanksgiving.
Exactly, right? Mileage may vary, but here's the rules you should adhere to. Here's how I did it. And oh, by the way, here's how everyone has told me it works that way too. So it's having that rigidity, but also the flexibility of giving you, hey, you don't have to do it exactly this way. Here's how we recommend. And a lot of customers are more accepting of validated designs as opposed to the rigidity of complex systems, because of exactly what we just talked about. What if I have to move that data one day? What if I have to get off this hardware or end of life, or all the challenges that we help offset for our customers from a data services perspective becomes real? Like, this is why the evolution keeps happening over and over again, because infrastructure is going to change, but the validated design can always exist, because we're always going to validate the solution.
And so, I mean, if you look at the upper right quadrant at Gartner, you guys are there. You've been there for many years. You've done work in Houston. You've done work in Singapore. You've done work in, Paris, and many different applications. And so you get your design people together and say, look, what in this A, B, and C, given these factors, well, it's probably going to be this. Now, C, D, and E, this is the best way to approach it. Why? Because we made a lot of mistakes in Paris on this. And oh, by the way, John Gilroy made all these mistakes in Seattle, and we learned not to do this and that. And so, boy, that's what I want. I don't want to, hey, part A, start with, it's frustrating.
Yeah, absolutely. And taking from the concept of validated designs, when you look at something like our Pure Storage, platforms, for some customers that come from a traditional storage background that say, oh, it's just a bunch of flash. And once you peel the layers back and understand and educate, actually it's a completely holistic operating system that's designed to consume flash from the ground up. It's actually kind of like a giant metadata key store. So I can have a lot of performance. I can have not a lot of the pain that comes with that. So now, when I want to try something new, and I understand it'll look the same, but it'll work different under the covers. It's kind of like saying, hey, I love my Model A, but a Tesla sounds really cool. It has 4 wheels and a pedal, right? What else do you need, right? If it gets you there and it gets you there more quickly and efficiently without risk, yeah, let's try it out. And for some customers, it's really that aggressive of a change. It's a change of a mindset, because once the light goes off with our customers, there's a whole shift, a paradigm shift of, no, we're not talking about day-to-day operations anymore, because our products are simple, scalable, secure, period, end of story. We're not talking about, hey, we have to take 3 months to do a migration. We don't move a single block of data when customers move between our hardware platforms. I've seen it, I've done it. True, like the old concept of the ship of Theseus, right? Use that concept of, going back to ancient Greek, of, there was a ship that existed, Theseus' ship, right? It was a certain build. Now over time, they replaced the planks, they replaced the mast, they replaced, everything within the ship. And this philosophical approach came about is, well, if you've replaced every single part within here, it is still the same ship. And that's what's interesting about our platform, is that we do replace over time without interrupting our customers' data. That's our focus. That's why we're customer obsessed, because we want to take all of that pain and risk away to give our customers that different experience that, honestly, a lot of them call our bluff. It's like, no way. No. I've been doing this for 25, 30 years, whippersnapper. There's no way you're getting one on me. And, oh, okay. And next thing you know, they're wearing an orange shirt and having a great time.
Washington Post, just a few blocks from here. But I'm sure if you picked up a physical newspaper from the Washington Post over the last few weeks, you'd see NVIDIA popping up in the headlines. They're popping up for a lot of stock, and they're doing real well.
Sure.
And so when I was at purestorage.com this morning, I went to your press releases. They said, looky here. It looks like you're partnering with NVIDIA. It's like, well, what's going on here? So this is the news, and maybe this is the news out of the conference this morning, is that you're combining best of breed in both areas to produce efficiency for the government.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they're going to be okay. I think those kids are going to make it. I think they're on to something.
I think NVIDIA might be pretty good,
But when you look at what they've done, obviously with the hardware perspective with GPUs, but their software stack getting into like TensorFlow and things like that, when you start to have that precipice of what does good look like, I need something that's performant, that's scalable, that is simple to use. Because again, NVIDIA wants their customers focused on the outcome, focused on the application, focused on what matters, and not being drowned out in the nuances of the speeds and feeds. Just understand, here's what you should expect. This is where that best of breed comes together. And what we announced at Supercompute 24 was we are fully validated for a SuperPod certification for our Ethernet solution for FlashBlade. That's huge. Now that's just one part of the puzzle, but our partnership with NVIDIA is really just, it's not something new. We've had BasePod solutions for years. Yeah. We were one of the first DGX back in the day as well. So having a different way to say, hey guys, we've been doing this for a while, and oh, by the way, nothing has changed because we don't really change. We modify and enhance our software. Yeah. NVIDIA is enhancing their software. Now you can have the sort of iteration you want and not have that traditional infrastructure model. Because I'll tell you, nobody's buying NVIDIA compute and putting VMware on it, right, to put a bunch of virtual machines. Yeah. It's not happening. It's not going to happen, pal. It just doesn't work. So when we look at it from that lens, everything is purpose-built. Everything needs to drive towards an outcome. It also means I need to have a fast time to value. More importantly, and I think a phrase that Mr. Gallo at Sorghumfry uses, is time to science. Yeah. When I look at an AI initiative, machine learning, anything high-performance compute, how quickly can I make sure that my smart folks, if you will, and I'm using air quotes, smart folks, my data analysts, my data scientists, my folks that are really involved in this, they're not sitting around waiting for data to process. In fact, the data is waiting on them. What's next? What you got? Right? It's fantastic. It's like having a little Labrador. It's just ready to go all the time. Like, throw me the ball again. Ready to go.
So, Greg, I wrote down your question. What does good look like? I have the answer. It does not look like me. That's for sure. But this was a very good interview, and I would like to do more in the future. I'd love to take and just take maybe one agency and see how they have applied Pure Storage to save money and maybe drive insight. And so we'll do some down maybe in 2025, different venues, Ron Reagan Center here, the convention. It'll be a lot of fun. Good. Absolutely. You have been listening to the Federal Tech Podcast with John Gilroy. I'd like to thank my guest, Greg Carl, Principal Technologist at a company called Pure Storage.